Greetings viewers, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, as you've seen from the title, is everything wrong with my 300,000 mile Outback. In last Sunday's video, we did a recap of everything I have put into the car since I purchased it back in 2013 and how many miles I've driven it since. That was about 65,000 miles, and put like $4,800, $4,900, if I recall correctly, into it. So a lot of you ask, well, what's wrong with it now? What do you need now? What needs to be done to continue driving it? How much more money are you going to put into this thing? So that's what we're going to cover in today's video. Last week I went over the entire car, did a thorough inspection front to back, and looked at every single issue I could find on the car. This morning I went to SubaruParts.com, Opposed Forces, and a few other places I used to locate parts, and priced everything out. But before we get into all that, I want to answer a comment that kept popping up in last week's video. A lot of you said, well, that's all well and good, but you're a mechanic, you've got tools, you don't have to pay labor. What were the labor costs on this stuff? And as I responded to many of the comments asking about labor, it does not matter. And let me tell you why. This is my personal car, this is my personal experience. None of you out there own this particular car, nor have the exact problems this car has had. So giving you labor and all that is just hypothetical, playing devil's advocate. It has no bearing whatsoever. Like I said, my personal experience, it is what it is. So in this video, we're just going to be covering parts as well. We're not adding labor in because, again, my personal experience on my personal car. So labor is not, anywhere in the picture. I don't pay myself labor. None of you own this car, so none of you have to worry about paying labor to do what I'm going to do to this car, so it doesn't matter. It's a wash. So that out of the way, we can get into everything I found wrong on the car. As we go through the list, I'm going to have some video clips intermingled showing what I found. Hopefully I videotaped all of it and still have the files from last week. So starting off, I don't know why I decided to start at the rear and work my way forward, but that's what I did. So first, rear diff bushings. I'm pretty sure they're original. They had a good run, starting to get some dry rot tears. Not really tears, but they're starting to crack. The rubber's degrading. Those are 11 bucks a piece times 2, so 22 bucks. The rear link arms, the bushings in those really aren't replaceable. They're cheap enough just to replace the whole unit. They're 69 bucks a piece, so 138 for the pair. Bushings for the control arms in the rear. Years ago, I replaced those control arms with used ones, but the bushings are starting to break down in the used arms. So we're just going to replace the bushings this go around because it's much cheaper than replacing the whole arm. They're 8 bucks a piece, so 16 bucks there. The secondary control arm bushings are $11 a piece times 2, so 22 bucks. From there, the rear struts, as far as I know, this car has factory struts all the way around. Every single one of them still says Subaru on them, so I hope at some point in their life they've been changed. 60,000 miles is normally the interval for struts. This thing does ride like it does have old suspension. I'm sure it would ride like a Cadillac had I replaced everything. But it hasn't been terrible. It's not bumpy, and it's not like crazy bucking around, crazy ride quality, so I've kind of let it slide. But rear struts need to be addressed. They're 109 a piece, times 2 is 218. That's Subaru factory. Now, if I priced out KYBs, I'm sure it would be a little bit less, but the Subaru uses KYBs. If you look at the factory struts, it says KYB by Subaru, or Subaru by KYB or something. KYB and Subaru both stamped with the Subaru part number in factory struts, all the way up until about my Crosstrek and the newer models around the 2010s. They switched. Can't remember exactly off the top of my head who they've switched to and gone away from KYB. I'll put it down here, but I do know they have changed the strut manufacturer they use on the car. Trailing arm bushings, they're getting splits in them pretty bad. They're 40 bucks a piece times 2, so 80 bucks. The upper mounts for the struts, the upper strut mounts, $88 a piece, so 176. Sway bar end links, they're getting really rough. The boots are tore up. They're getting some play in them, probably making a little bit of noise too. $28 times 2, $56 there. We need a new set of tires. These tires are pretty chewed up. Just priced a set of Michelin Defenders the other day. I get them pretty much at cost, and I'm out and balance them myself at my buddy's shop that orders them for me. So 600 bucks for a set of Michelin Defenders for the car. To the front suspension, front struts, 119 a piece times 2, 238. The upper strut mount, 60 bucks times 2, 120. Sway bar, no. Suspension, control, bushing, rear. Oh, the big rear control arm bushings. They're not leaking. They're not really got a lot of slop in them, but with 300,000 miles, time to replace them. So $69 times 2, 138. End leaks for the front. They're starting to come apart a little bit. They're plastic. They're a weird polycarbonate thing. They're not a piece of metal with spherical hind joints for some reason, like most of the sway bar end links. 46 times 2, so 92 bucks. Sway bar bushings, 50 bucks, $51 times 2, 102. From there, as we see in the clips and video, we got quite a bit of seepage starting to happen at the timing chain cover, from the rocker covers again, from the upper and lower oil pan, probably from the rear main seal in the back. Not dripping yet, although I think there is one small little area that does have a drip now, but mostly it's just seepage. So plan to pull out and do a full reseal from the short block up, hopefully whenever I get my shop built. So everything that I will be putting into that reseal / refresh, water pump 116, thermostat 18 bucks, master overhaul gasket seal kit for an EZ30D is 312. These are just SubaruParts.com prices, I'm sure. Well, not sure, because a lot of times SubaruParts.com actually beats my wholesale account from the local Subaru dealership in Charlotte. So prices are pretty much where they're going to be at. Rocker cover gaskets, $27 times 2. Spark plug well seals, they're not included with the rocker covers. They're 8 bucks a piece times 6, $48. From there, both time and chain, 75 bucks a piece, 150 bucks in chains. All the idler sprockets, guides, and the gears, all that stuff has to be replaced. Not necessarily, but it's good too, because the chain develops a wear pattern on these cogs and gears. And if you do not change them, you know, you'll have a mess with a new chain and the old wear pattern on the cog. So it's best to replace every single component in the timing set at once. So upper idler is 36 bucks, lower idler is $41. Chain, there's several chain guides. One's $43. The tensioners for the chain guides, they're 72 bucks a piece times 2, so 144. A different chain guard is 50 bucks. Another chain guard is 26. There's 2 small ones on the ends, they're identical, so $52 for the pair of those. 2 more chain guards, one's 34 and one is 17. Then there's another one that's 40 bucks. Cam gear, exhaust gears are $64 times 2, so 128. Intake gears are $69 times 2, so 138. And the crank gear is 60 bucks. The half moon cam, rear cam seal plugs are 7 bucks times 4, $28. I figure about 3 tubes of ultra gray RTV, because there's a lot of RTV sealing on this engine between the upper and lower oil pans, the timing chain covers, etc. So I equated 3 smaller tubes, 8 bucks a piece, $24. As we see in the video, we've got the passenger side axle seal is starting to leak some gear oil. That's 6 bucks. And that big mess that looks like the whole transmission's leaking, all that is a $3 O-ring at the main harness going into the transmission. So $3 for that O-ring and some brake parts clean to clean up all that transmission fluid, and the transmission will be right as rain. So that's basically everything mechanical that the car needs to be tip-top 100%. We're not gonna look at cosmetic stuff. It does need some paint correction. There are some interior pieces that need to be replaced, as you saw in last week's video. The driver's seat cover's got quite a bit of wear on it, and there's a couple of you know, things here and there that could be addressed, but nothing that's gonna prevent us from, you know, continuing to drive on down the road. Granted, most of this stuff I could probably neglect to do and just keep driving it and, you know, wouldn't really have an issue, but as of the last 4,000 or 5,000 miles, I'm starting to hear a chain rattle. So one of our tensioners is getting weak, or one of our guides is starting to come apart. So really need to address this sooner than later before we have some kind of catastrophic failure with the timing chain system. Subaru does not recommend a regular timing chain replacement on their timing chain engines like they do the EJs with the timing belt. That's, you know, normally 90,000, 95,000 mile service for the belt and all components. The chains, as Subaru rules them, are quote unquote lifetime, which equates to around 300,000 miles in Subaru speak. So this engine's got 200,000 miles on it. You know, we've got quite a bit of driving on that, 200,000 miles. The chain guides are starting to rattle. So you address it as you have an issue. Hopefully you have forewarning before catastrophic failure on the chains, but there's no set interval for replacement or maintenance on those. So down to the big picture, what kind of money are we looking at here? So everything suspension-wise comes out to $1,418. Everything engine-wise comes out to $1,542. Machine work on the engine, I equate about $500 to completely go through both cylinder heads, deck them, valve job, guides, you know, everything, valve adjustment, all that stuff, because I'm pretty sure that the EZ30D is a shim bucket engine like the turbo engines and the later EJ25Ds, where you've got a hydraulic lifter with a shim on top of it that rides, the camshaft lobes ride directly on. So it's a one-time kind of set thing. There are tools to set them, but you've got to buy a billion different thicknesses of shims, and it's a very tedious, time-consuming ordeal compared to the hydraulic lash adjusters on some of the older EJ22s and the first model EJ25D, or the regular adjustable rocker arms on the single overhead cam 2.5s and some of the other Subaru engines. So machine work about $500, $600 as I mentioned for the Michelin tires. That brings us to a grand total of $4,060 to be added to the grand total from last week's video, which I think was $4,900. So is that a terribly gigantic amount of money to have tied up in a car that's traveled 300,000 miles? I don't think so personally. Is it worth dumping another $4,060 into a car that is, what, 18 years old at this point? If I were to have a wreck in it, even with full coverage, I wouldn't get $1,000 probably. You know, is it worth the money to invest in it? Don't know. Am I probably going to cherry pick what I do? Probably so. Am I definitely going to pull out and resell the engine? Probably sooner than later. I'll go ahead and do that, because if anything happens, I'll still have the engine, you know, to go into something else. Am I worried about the transmission? The transmission is completely bone stock original factory transmission, not been replaced, no issues, knock on wood, still shifts perfectly, no issues whatsoever. I've seen factory 4EATs get up to 500, 600,000 miles, so I'm not worried about messing with the transmission, other than continuing to do normal 30,000 mile fluid changes and the occasional transmission filter replacement. Contrary to popular belief of the internet, once again, these old 4EAT conventional automatics and the later 5EAT conventional automatics are quite reliable, and they were made by Jatco, made and designed, which is funny because people talk about how crappy their CVT transmissions are. Yes, I said CVT transmissions. Yes, I know it's redundant. Sorry, all you in the comments. But that has been another misconception, that Jatco did the CVT for Subaru. That's not true. The Subaru Lineartronic CVTs are all in-house by Subaru. And people gripe about the CVT in Subaru being junk because it is supposedly a Jatco, when Jatco made some of the most reliable transmissions Subaru ever ran previously. It's all a big muddled up mess from those top automotive YouTubers spreading all that good Subaru misinformation around. So there we have it, $4,060 gets this car back to brand new condition mechanically, essentially. Is it worth it? You know, that would be for you to decide and for me to decide. And as I said, we will do it sporadically. The engine, of course, will get overhauled. The major failure components in the suspension will get overhauled. Struts mainly first. We will be addressing that axle seal leakage. That needs to be addressed ASAP, as well as the leaking wiring harness on the transmission. Really wish I'd caught that before I did the pan reseal like 4 years ago, but you know, it's just an hour or two and a tube of RTV to reseal that pan. It's a very simple, straightforward repair. I actually filmed a video on it a year ago on a Forester. I've kind of lost the footage. It didn't really come out really well. I might need to dig through the archives and see if I have that stuff and can make a video out of it. But all you really got to do is drain the fluid, drop the pan, disconnect all of your solenoids, and the most critical point of it is there's a plastic fitting with 4 little plastic tabs. You have to squeeze those tabs very carefully because that piece is old and lots of heat cycles and very brittle, and pop it out of the transmission. Then there's an O-ring on it. You replace that O-ring, pop it back in, hook all your wiring up, reseal your pan, refill, and you're good to go. But if you break one of those ears off, you're kind of screwed because you can't buy that piece by itself. You have to buy the entire transmission wiring harness, which I'm not even sure if Subaru still makes it or if it's discontinued at this point. So again, I'm rambling on about stuff that has nothing to do with the video directly. You came here to see what was wrong with my 300,000 mile Outback. I've now told you and how much it costs, so there you have it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video.